Hey there, my name is Brad. Welcome back to the shop. This is part 1 of the 2020 Breakout 117 stage 4 kit that we're doing. Here's the 2020 Breakout 114 that we were talking about. It only has 600 miles on it. It is essentially in stock trim with the exception of this timer cover that I put on yesterday. It's an accessory, along with the big Kahuna hand grips up there. But the mufflers, the exhaust system, all of that is stock. We have a front fender cover on just to protect the front end and the front fender while we're working on it. Everything's stock on this side. And it has a swing arm bag that I installed yesterday. It has a pretty nice, like, I don't know what type of metal that, I'm sure it's like pot metal, but it has a nice finish to it. And it has little quick release clips to it. So it makes it nice and user friendly. So that's kind of cool. Alright, to the parts that we're going to be installing. Over here we have the Vance & Hines big radius exhaust system. I have the heat shields off to the side so that they don't get scuffed or anything. The hardware that comes with that and the exhaust mount bracket. The customer wants to use the Pro Street Tuner and he just wants the appropriate download for it. So this vehicle won't be getting tuned or anything, so we'll see how that goes. It has this K&N air filter element. It's a Screamin Eagle component along with a black backing plate. And this is a Screamin Eagle accessory cover that goes over the top. As for the engine kit, this is the 117 stage 4 kit with the CNC ported heads. Big bore cylinders. There's a little bit of a pop up to the piston, so it adds a little more compression. It has the Screamin Eagle 515 cam and the 64mm throttle body. It comes with 5.5 gram fuel injectors, along with a little stouter clutch spring to help hold the clutch pressure. Here are the type of special tools that I'm going to be using other than just normal hand tools. See if I can get all of these in picture. This is a little pipe clamp apparatus. It comes from Harley Davidson. Essentially when new vehicles or new platforms come out, Harley Davidson just sends us the tools that we need to work on them and then sends us the bill. But it's super convenient where it's like a remote access, like hose clamp thing, and then it has a little lock handle there too, so see? It's pretty sweet. That actually comes in super handy, especially on touring bikes where they have those like coolant clamps up around the front, little pain in the butt. This is a pair of little protected pliers to reach down into the spark plugs on the right hand side where the spark plug wire is deep down inside of the rocker box, so you can grab a hold of it and pull it out without damaging the spark plug wire. This is a special tool from Harley Davidson to get in and remove that engine temperature sensor that's in the cylinder head. I used to just pull the connector off of it and use a 13mm wrench, but this is the correct tool for it. It is part number 48116. It's a Kentmore tool, so you have to order it from a Harley Davidson dealership. And this is the correct automatic compression release tool, because we'll need to remove the compression releases from the stock cylinder heads, put them into the CNC ported ones. It's part number 48498-B. This one's made specifically for Milwaukee-Eights, so it's kind of shorter. If you have one for a twin cam, it'll be longer. And you can't use it with the twin cam one. You can't use it on a Milwaukee-Eight while the cylinder heads are in the frame. But if you have the cylinder heads off, like on the table, you can use a twin cam one. But this is the actual correct Milwaukee-Eight one, so this is what I'm going to be using today. You're going to want a crank sprocket locking tool. This is the same one as a twin cam, just for reference. You're going to want a straight edge of some sort. This is the Screamin tool that I'm going to be using to remove the inner cam bearing. You can tell it's mine. It's been well used. It's part number 94144-09. That's these components. And then this is a Kentmore tool. It's a Harley Davidson version, HD-42325-4. But you can find many different generic tools like this. It's just to press in the inner cam bearing. And then over here, this is a set of cylinder hold downs that I made out of old cylinder head bolts. And I found these spacers that just have a slight interference fit, so I just pressed them on there. And then I use a little nylon washer just to hold the cylinder just down so they aren't flopping around if I'm rolling the engine over. And this is a little elbow from a old Softail for the oil drain. That's this little funny little elbow that I found a bolt, stuck it in there. I use this when I have the oil distribution manifold off the top of the engine, like when I have the rocker boxes off, so that I can plug the oil cooling port and crank the engine over and then watch oil pressure shoot out of the rocker arms. It's just, you know, it's a piece of tube. I have Screamin assembly lube. I have 2 bottles because this one's almost empty. I believe it's part number 11300002. Screamin assembly lube. This is Torco engine assembly lube. This comes with SNS cam plates. I really like it. It's really good stuff. It's nice and thin. So I like using this on oil pumps and things like that. Where the thicker Screamin assembly lube, I like using on like valve tips and rocker arms and push rods. Just personal preference. And a set of feeler gauges. You know, whatever kind you like. These are the ones that I have. So I will put a link to all the parts that I use in this assembly down in the description. So let's get going and start taking a look at the vehicle. Before I forget, I should mention that I did double check the piston ring end gap in the cylinders just real quick yesterday to make sure that everything is as it should be there. So the first order of business is going to be getting the exhaust system out of the way along with the rear foot peg, along with the air cleaner kit. Might as well just get that off and out of the way. And then the oil distribution manifold up here for the oil cooling ports. I haven't ever done one on a Softail before. Normally on a touring bike it's on the left hand side, and then you have to kind of pull the bolts out off of it, remove the rear, and then pick the rear up and then pull the front end out. But like I was saying, this is the first time I've done it on a Softail, and it's a little bit different. It's on the right hand side here, so obviously we'll have to get the spark plug wires out of the way. It looks like getting the exhaust system out of the way is going to be making that a lot easier for us, and we'll just kind of take it slowly and see how that goes. So we're going to get to disassembling this engine, and then I'll kind of bring you back whenever there's important parts outside of general disassembly or general reassembly. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Make sure that you hit the bell for notifications so that you're notified whenever I upload a video. Thanks for watching. Alright, I don't know if this is in frame. This is a little bit of a funny way to video something. This stock head pipe is impressively lightweight. Like, see if I can hold it on one little pinky finger. I don't know if you can see that, but like, it's stainless steel, but impressive. I'm sure that you could have just ripped off the exhaust system without taking the mufflers or the heat shields off, but this thing is essentially a brand new vehicle. Like, it still has 600 miles on it, so it needs to look like a brand new vehicle when I'm done with it. And being that I haven't done a Softail engine kit before, I don't want to like just go through and start being roughhousing and jamming things like on and off and everything. You know, like, once you get a little more familiar, once I do 40 of them, then it's easy to know exactly what you can, you know, slide past other things without things touching or scuffing, but I don't want to push it today. So we got the exhaust pipe off. You just use, I have these, they're from Snap-on. They're called dog ring pliers, but they're usually used for transmissions. They have a little dimple in it. I don't know if you can see it on either side. And it makes it real nice and easy to pop the clips off. That clip has seen better days. I don't know what happened to that thing when it got installed, but we're gonna be making sure that looks a lot better. We're gonna have to get a new one, but whatever. I'll pop these guys off along with the flanges. And then a 14mm wrench for your narrow bands. Then I'm just going to take it off to the side, put the heat shields back on it. That way it makes it easy for when the customer comes and picks it up. That's also a funny little note, like, look at how it kind of tapers down right there. It's weird. It's weird now that I have it off and you're looking at it and it's so lightweight. Pretty strong though. Like, it's flexing just a little bit. I don't know if that's important to anybody to know, but now you know. All right, here for the rear oil cooling distribution manifold. Like there's an easy access clamp to get to at the bottom to pull that off. The top clamp almost covers one of the two screws back here. It seems like it would probably be easier to cut the heat shrink and then cut the clamp up at the top, but usually those are types of things that we don't have in stock. So I'm going to use a 3/8 little swivel and a 1/4 inch bit on a 1/4 inch extension. And I removed this cover earlier because I was kind of getting close to it, and then like if a tool would have slipped, it could have scratched or damaged the cover. So before that happened, I popped the cover off, so that's why it's not here. And without it being here, we have a little more room for this. Let's see if this works. Try to get a good angle down in there. If we can get it a little bit straighter. All right. Those bolts are in very tight. Like the Loctite is really good stuff that they put on it. All right, seems to be coming. It's looking like that was a pretty good idea. There we go. Now we got two of them. Oh, and I don't know if you saw me earlier, but I was thumbing through the service manual last night, and it said once you disconnect the front hose, if you blow low pressure air through it, it will help to blow the oil out of the cylinder heads and then out of the manifold down into the oil tank. So I unscrewed the dipstick and pulled it out, and that's what I did. I used just the slightest air pressure, and you could hear it. You could hear it like gargling all the way back down in the oil tank. So much so that it's like not even dripping out of this hose, which is really nice, because if you don't do that first, you get a whole buttload of oil. At least on touring models you do. So, all right, now let's go get those front two screws. When I was thumbing through the service manual last night, and I was looking at what the operation was to remove this coolant oil cooling manifold, it said to remove the spark plugs on the right hand side and remove some screws. So that leads me to believe that this comes off this right hand side. It's kind of a weird little system, because like the way that they mount up on the heads, you would think that it would kind of come from the left, but it is very obviously on the right hand side of the frame. It looked up pretty tight up front, so there was an extra little multi-piece like front engine mount where we had taken off the part where it mounted to the cylinder head up here, but I took off the rest of the part where it mounted to the frame. So, and then we also saw there that it very obviously the holes were oblong, so it's important to put this center engine mount back in with the coil bracket that brings the engine up center-ish, and then you tighten down this bracket. But just important things to keep your eye out for when you're doing stuff. So I still can't get my little pliers back in here to get the spark plug out, So with these, like, it has like almost like little dowels that go into the cylinder head for the oil ports with O-rings on them. So you kind of have to like unplug them, like wiggle the tubes and then pull them out. At least that's the way the touring ones are. And to me, it still kind of looks like the rear one would come off this way and then up, but you have to be careful about how tight these bends are and that they don't like scuff any of the chrome. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wiggle back here, break those O-rings loose a little bit, pop it off the side, get my tool, pop the spark plug out, or spark plug wire, and then lift the vehicle up and be very careful about what I'm doing here, since, like I said, it's my first time doing this Softail one. So here we go. Well, that went much easier than I was fearing, but yeah, it's just like doing a touring one, but instead of doing it on the left, you do it on the right. So you pop the back side up, pull it out, and then like kind of get it over here, and then move it around a little bit to pull the rubber hose around to this side, and then it pulls up and out. I did want to make one special note right here. When I pulled the little clamp off the rubber hose, like I don't know if I'm going to show it in the video or if it came through, but I was going to leave this little clamp up on the hose, but then that would have left these metal ears to kind of like bop around and ding things, as I was expecting that rubber hose was going to the right like it was. So I'm glad that I had the foresight to take it off the rubber hose and drop it down. There's just enough room right before where the mount is for this oil drain back tube, so that the clamp can just kind of like hang down in the bottom, and then you don't have to worry about scratching up all your stuff going through. So here's what I do with things when I'm unfamiliar, like I said, that this is my first Softail, so I like to put things in a row. So when I go back, the oil manifolds first, then this little bracket, then the little clips for the knock sensors, then the coil bracket, and we made that special reminder note to tighten that thing up pretty much last. Then the screws for the coolant manifold, make sure that I don't forget the clamp, the bracket for the coolant manifold, air cleaner, and that's the way that we took things off. So it's easy to put them right back together without putting one thing together and then having to go backwards and forwards and all of that business. probably should have read into the instructions or the service manual a little more last night, because I only read as far as the oil distribution manifold. But once I got to pulling the rear rocker box cover actually off, it kept on hitting the bottom of the wiring harness that sits up under the backbone. And then as I started looking at it, it had a couple like quick Phillips head clips here and then here with a little tongue that fit up into this plastic part. So after undoing those two little clips, this one on the side and then there's one up under, and then the quick plastic like tongue under the front, the whole wiring harness folded up and off to the side, so that gives us wide open space to work in here. So that's nice. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull the spark plugs out, put the vehicle in gear, and then roll the engine over so that one cylinder is going to be on overlap, and then I'm going to undo the rocker arms on the opposite cylinder. So let's get to doing that. Alright, now that the spark plugs are removed, we're in 6th gear. We're going to watch for the exhaust valve to open and then almost shut, and the intake valve should open at the same time. So you'll see like a little, and that will show that we're on overlap here. Then we're able to take apart the opposite cylinder's valve train. So let's take a look at that. So the intake, so the exhaust valve is opening, and then did you see that where there's like this little area of overlap? So let's just do that again, just double check. So the intake valve opens and closes, then the exhaust valve opens and it almost shuts as the intake valve begins to open. So that's overlap. So then we'll go over to its opposite cylinder, and if the lifters are bled down and everything and you aren't on overlap, you're on the base circle, you should be able to move the rocker arm back and forth up against the clearance. So like how you can hear that? So that one's good. The front one's a little quieter. You can hear the clearance, and since you're able to slide it back and forth, that's an indication that everything is in the right spot for us to take apart the cylinder. If you have the rocker box covers on, then I undo the pushrod tubes, and if everything's ready to be taken apart, like it's in the correct sequence on this cylinder, you'll be able to rotate the push rods by hand. But we don't need to rotate the push rods by hand because we can feel the clearance right at the rocker arm. So I'm going to undo these screws for the rocker arms, put these off to the side, roll it back over, and I'm going to feel the top of the push rods on this rear cylinder. Same thing, I'll feel the exhaust open and then almost close, and then the intake valve or the intake push rod will just slightly open. And then I will go back to the front cylinder, move the rocker arms back and forth, make sure that they're free, and then remove those rocker arms. And then we'll continue down and do the lower rocker box covers, the push rod tubes, and the cylinder heads, and get this thing apart. So we just popped the stock cylinder heads off the vehicle. There's one important note to make about Softails. If I fully undid these bolts, the washers would have gouged into the frame. So once I left them out this far, the front motor mount bracket was made to kind of like slip in there and everything. So I'm not going to forget about them. I'm going to move these over to the new cylinder heads right now. That way once I bolt everything down, I don't forget about it. Well, so we're back from lunch, if you are wondering. The ramen noodle soup was excellent. But here we are. I like to put the pistons on the table with the arrows pointing forward, like they are going to be in the engine. And then the cylinders also like they're going to be in the engine. Now this one says the front cylinder. You can also tell because it has this cut to it, so it's going to match up to the other cylinder, but it specifically says front. Likewise with the rear, this one's harder to tell, but it says RR. The table's clean. I've already degreased the parts and cleaned out the oil drain back holes, and also where the cylinders go, or where the cylinder studs go, so that's all set. So the next thing that I do, so I don't know if you can tell, but I get like this lint-free-ish towel. I fold it up like that, and then I get some of your favorite standard Harley Davidson oil. Put a blop in it, just like that. This is going to be tough to do. I'm going to do it left-handed, just to illustrate. And then I get it in there and I do this little figure-8 motion deal, because we're trying to clean out any type of debris that's sitting within the crosshatch. I'm going to move you to the other side because I'm right-handed. So I always do this. I've always done this figure-8 deal. And then I just rotate the cylinder around. So you can see all that dirt. And it's not really dirt, it's leftover like machining debris. It usually takes 4 times until it comes out clean. So like we've already done it once. We're on our 2nd time doing it. But OEM cylinders come pretty clean. Like if you take it down the street and have the guy do it, you know, I'm just saying whoever your guy is, you'll take it and have it done locally if you're boring cylinders or whatever. And they're always like 10 times dirtier. See, we still have a lot of stuff. I like to get around the spigot too, because that part goes inside the engine. So you want to make sure that that's as clean as possible. I don't know what happens, but every time I try to use the GoPro and like film like cleaning cylinders or putting piston rings on pistons and then putting them in cylinders, I always forget to click record. So I don't know how much of that came through, But I looked down and the red light wasn't flashing as usual, it seems like, so whatever. So the pistons are clean, the cylinders have been degreased and oiled, and this is just, if you wanted to see, these are all the rags with material left on them. So then we have the cylinders orientated like they're going to be on the bike, so the front and rear. And then the front piston and rear piston, it doesn't really matter, just as long as the arrows are pointing forward with these Screamin Eagle pistons. I already have one wrist pin clip in the left hand side, and we've already checked the ring end gap. So the last thing to do with the rings is I just squirt a little juice on here. By juice I just meant fresh Harley Davidson 20W50. And I just wipe them down real quick. Harley Davidson piston rings, or at least Screamin Eagle piston rings, seem to be pretty clean fairly often, as opposed to like sometimes when you get some aftermarket engine kits. But at least the T-Man ones that I've always gotten have always been super clean too. All of his stuff is always super clean. But just saying. I'm just wiping everything down. You want to be careful with them. They are pretty thin. So then I get myself a piston, just like this, and then this oil ring has two little edges on it, two little tips. You want the tips facing up. I am gonna orientate it like that. Actually, I lied. I'm going to move it. To over here. This just happens to be the way that I like to do it. Feel free to follow your service manual for the correct answer. Then I'm just walking this oil ring into its home. Making sure it didn't push our little expander grooves out to do anything wonky. It didn't. They look good. I'm going to do the next oil rail. So that looks good. And then the top rings are directional. It's easier to see when they're dry, but the second ring is a scraper ring. So it's got a little dot to indicate up. And then I just start one side and its groove. Easier said than done, on camera at least. And then I walk it down into its groove with our dot facing up. And then same thing, the top ring is going to have the top ring has a bevel cut into it. So like the bottom part of this has like a little chamfer to it. So the E is going to face up, or M. It's definitely an M. Face up like that. And then that piston is ready to go. We'll get our next set. And same thing, we're just going to squirt a little juice on here. Just wipe her down in case there's any type of like crud on it. And then we'll get our next piston. Same thing, we're going to start with the expander rail. Get our little grooves. Toss her in there. And then, I want it up over here. And then our lower rail. Make sure our little expander thingy, yep, looks good. Our next little oil rail. Then again, our second ring has a scraper to it, and dots facing up. And then our top ring has an M. Both the top and the second ring have M's on them, just the second ring has a dot also. Alright, so those are all set. Then I like to use Screamin Eagle assembly lube for this. We'll get our wrist pins. And I like to also shoot a little oil in it, just because. like to put a little oil on it first. Smear that around. Whew. And then put a little assembly lube. Because the assembly lube is so thick, it's like, you can probably tell just by the stringiness just how thick it is, which is great, but the engine oil seems to like break it down and cut it down a little bit, so it's a little bit thinner. Alright, so now that we've made a mess, now I'm going to take my gloves off.